why do we waste time reading every book possible, watching every YouTube video possible, listening to podcast after podcast, instead of just making a call and building a relationship? I mean, there's no need to waste time anymore.
Welcome to the No One Ever Told Me podcast, where we talk about the things that no one ever tells you that you really need to know to be successful and to thrive in business and in leadership. Today, my guest is Scott Stevens, managing partner at Pro Legacy Capital. And if you listen to the intro, you might be wondering, why would we feature a clip where Scott says, stop listening to podcast after podcast? Well, the heart of this show is to encourage the listener to courageously take his or her next step on their leadership journey. And in this conversation, you'll see that Scott is a gifted encourager and a generous mentor to other leaders. Plain and simple, he inspires action. Scott, welcome to the show. Let's jump in. When you tell people what you do for a living, how do you answer that question?
Yeah, easy. It's my name's Scott. I work with athletes, entertainers, and entrepreneurs to buy income-producing properties.
That's pretty succinct. So that's the elevator pitch, right?
That's the elevator pitch.
So tell me about Pro Legacy Capital. When did that start?
We formalized it this last year. So I'm a full-time real estate investor. I've got a buddy who works in premium finance life insurance. They really pair well with athletes. That's like guys making $500,000 or more. The bank pays your life insurance. It's incredible. And I said, man, this would pair so well with what I do, helping guys invest in real estate. And so we launched that just this year officially.
Okay. But you didn't start here.
No.
So let's talk about your journey. What's your story that had led up to starting this company a year ago?
You know, I found when I give, a lot of things come back to me. And so about 8 years ago, I wasn't in real estate. I was in IT recruiting. And I was helping a mentor of mine. I started a board for him to raise money. And so we're meeting with this board. And we have a meeting Friday. I call one of the members. I know he's in real estate. I don't know what he does. And I say, Barry, you have time to meet Friday? He goes, no, I'm going to look at 50 houses. Which, who looks at 50 houses? I'm like, what do you do? Do you do tax sales? And he goes, that's what I've been doing for the past 20 years. And I only knew about tax sales because a former boss had called me 2 weeks before that to kind of ask me about it, and she gets into interesting stuff. So literally I said, oh, I've been wanting to get into that. 2 weeks later, I was out of IT recruiting. I was working at his house in Brentwood full-time in real estate investing. Like, my whole life shifted in one call.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Have you always been, has curiosity been a part of your leadership arsenal?
I would say it's one of my top 3 most important values.
Okay.
Is like having a deep curiosity. Like, I can always learn something from anyone. Mm-hmm. And there's always more for me to grow in. Like, if I'm done growing, I better be in the grave, right? I want to be 85, 90 and still learning new stuff.
I agree. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines, like, I always think we learn more from our mistakes and our failures than we do our successes. So, I mean, moving from IT recruiting, a pretty corporate job, to starting your own legacy capital investing firm.
Yeah.
What failures can you tell us about, and what did you learn from them? How'd they shape getting here?
Well, the funny part I didn't tell you is I got fired the next week. So basically, I just got free money because they paid me a severance, which gave me, a runway before he started paying me. So in a sense, that was a failure because I was launching this office in Nashville. I really thought I had what it took. Was that me being led to something else, or was that me just not working in the same manner it takes to succeed? I don't know, but you could tell the wheels were coming off on that. And so the whole time I was like looking for that next opportunity. I've always said, you don't have to kick the doors open. The ones I want are the ones that open for me. And I'm just trusting the doors that close are leading me into the open doors that are, just like that. And that's exactly how the whole path in real estate investing and being a full-time developer and investor has gone.
Yeah. Your wife is also a pretty talented leader, right? So you guys are kind of the power couple. How do you balance work and home and all those things together as you're getting a business going and she's getting a business going?
Well, it's a lot harder when you're not, doing really well financially. Yeah. Now it's easier, right? You can just pay for the people to help you out. But she's a financial advisor for divorce and widow women. Wiseandworthy.com is her brand. And the first year of marriage, she launched her new, brokerage opportunity. I had just started real estate investing, and we just moved in a house that the bathroom still wasn't done. So we had to live with my best friend's parents for 3 weeks just to finish the bathroom so we could live in this house that still wasn't done. That was a challenging year. Everything we do, we really believe in this rule, kind of how to live with grace. So we call it the first year rule. Anything I do, whether it's having a kid last year, right, starting a business, building new relationships, making mistakes in marriage, we say, first year rule, right? And so it kind of, you just let it go. Now, I rolled that in marriage into the second year rule and the third year rule. And sometimes I still drop it like the 8-year rule. It doesn't work as well. But everything has a season. So whenever we're launching something, even with this, and really just going harder than normal, we're going to commit to a year-long season. Whatever you do, you don't have to look at, I'm going to work 80 hours for the rest of my life. But when you're building something, maybe for the first year, you are. And that's okay. Then you retreat back and maybe take some nice vacations. And
I love that. What were some of the surprises? So, we're obviously on the No One Ever Told Me podcast. So. Yeah. You've transitioned, from corporate world to this really particular real estate investing instrument, the tax lien sale, to now legacy investing with pro athletes.
Yeah, buying apartments.
Yeah. You're moving up. So you're always learning something new. And there are some things that no one ever tells you. You just got to go in there and figure it out. What were the toughest things to figure out at each step of the journey?
So Matt, you and I talk about this, who's on your team, right?
Yeah.
So then as I get into buying bigger properties, your team looks a little different, and you need new mentors that have been there, done that. You're raising more money. So it's interesting. No one ever tells you how to find these right people. They're out there. You've got to find them if you want to advance things a little faster. So for instance, last month I'm doing a big land development deal, and the venture capital partner that we found it through our architect. I have a good buddy who's also he's developing a 180 unit apartment in Nashville. His investor came through his architect. So nobody ever told me hey, when you get into doing big stuff, a lot of times just go to the architect and they'll lead you. So it's who are the gatekeepers at each step of the way? And some of them are right in front of me, and they're a lot easier to connect with than I realized, Yeah. That's a big one. How do you find those mentors and advisors? Sometimes the connectors are right in front of you and you have no idea.
Well, that goes back to that curiosity, right?
Right.
That if that's in your value of I wonder if, or could this be this? Or I wonder if he knows so-and-so. I think activating that curiosity virtue allows you to ask the question and see what's right in front of you, right?
The other thing is people are willing, they want to help you. It's so rare that somebody comes to me and says, hey, how did you get into buying apartments? Will you teach me? Frankly, if somebody just asked me that question, I would want to help them. And so what I found, even though I'm moving up the food chain and I'm talking to more successful people, they still want to help me because I'm just asking for their help. And, I got here by starting with a mentor who helped me. And that's generally everybody's path. Somebody helped them, they want to help you. And that's a lot more simple than I realized. It's just a matter of gosh, I need to ask for help.
Okay, let's go back to the idea of team for a second, because no matter what industry you're in or what kind of business you might be looking to start, or maybe you're just trying to level up at work, how do you think about the idea of team? Who should be on an average Joe's team?
The number one value in my life is wisdom. If it's not number one in your life, the moment you make it number one, you will dramatically jump forward in your
wisdom.
life.
How do you define wisdom?
It's like a download. It's like a spiritual download of making the right decision at the right time, asking the right questions. Going back to, let's think of an example. That's a great question, Matt. You got me thinking, I've been talking to some buddies about their finances and helping them get into real estate. And we talked about finding wise people. There's not just generic, like that's the wisest person I know. It's generally like, this guy is really successful in this realm. Let me ask him about it. Like he has a great marriage. I should ask him what he does. He's a wise person. You really can see wisdom by its fruit, like the things that it produces. Like
that's good.
If you are with your marriage, like if you're a wise man in the way that you lead your family, I'll know because I'll just look at your relationship with your wife or how your kids are doing. Right? And I'll say there's some wisdom in there. Like he's doing things that the average person isn't. Tom Brady won the Super Bowl yesterday. Some people would mock his regimen, right? They say his book's crap. Well, guess what? The fruit shows. Like the dude looks younger at 45 than 35. He's probably got some wisdom that I need to look into. Like I may start eating more avocados tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So everything we do, if you want to step into this greater destiny or calling or success, it starts with pursuing wisdom. Like, am I wise? If I'm not in this area, how do I become wise? And a lot of it starts with relationships a lot of times, right?
You've got a really fearless approach to life. I've known you for a couple of years, and I've never thought once, Scott's afraid to do this or that. So pursuing wisdom, identifying fruit in someone else's life, and one specific area that you want to grow, that's a wonderful tactic. How do you have the courage to just say, hey, man, tell me how you did that? Like, because for a lot of people, that's a gate they don't want to step across. That's a bridge they're not willing to cross because they're nervous or insecure. Like, how do you overcome those moments?
It's not always instantaneous. A lot of times it's hitting a wall over and over again until you're like, wait, I should do something different, right? And then after you do that so much and you see like, oh, the architects connecting me with the investors, like that was so simple. I'm like, why do I waste so much time? I'm just going to get to the good stuff right away. I'm going to make that call. I told somebody last week in like calling pro athletes, I haven't had them tell me no enough for me to stop doing it, I haven't met many people that say like, yeah, I've been trying to find wisdom about, my profession or my marriage or my parenting or whatever. And these people just told me no, they didn't want to share. Like no one's ever told me that.
Okay.
So that's the first thing is like, I don't have enough no's not to do this. 2, I surround myself with people that are like that, me. Like they're always growing. And most people that don't want to seek this out are surrounded by people that are just literally holding them back. And so I don't want you to cut out all your friends and all your family right now, but if you want to be different, you better surround yourself with different people who are thinking differently, asking different questions.
How did you try to find relationships? Where'd you go? Is it all professional? Do you meet these people socially? How do you have the relationships to build that circle?
When I kind of changed callings in Nashville, there was a group of, it's a nonprofit called the Phoenix Club. And I was like, I need to be in that circle, right? I knew a few guys in it. I cultivated those relationships. And now I'm in a group of 100 plus guys that are all motivated to succeed. When it came to even my church, I was like, there's not a group of like-minded men, but I know they're out there, so I'm going to start it. Like a lot of times people are waiting for the right person to start something for them, and I'm like, just go start it. That's why we're on this podcast, because Matt, you just started it. So for me, like I used to spend a lot of time waiting for the right group of people to get connected with, and if I don't see it, I just do it. Like in the pro athlete entertainer circle, there's not a network of like the wealthiest real estate investing pro athletes. So that's why I'm starting it. Like, why wait?
You've used the word success a couple times. How do you define success now? But really more importantly, how has your definition of success changed in the last maybe 5 or 10 years?
Mm-hmm. Well, it starts with vision. That's the other thing about wisdom, right? If you have to have the vision first. So I tell people like my simple vision is I want to own 1,000 apartment units by the time I'm 40, right? And then we'll go to 10,000 after that. That's simple. If you don't have a vision for the area of life you're trying to grow in, like you're not going to grow. Whether it's your spiritual walk, your financial marriage, like it starts with a picture. You've got to see it in your mind. So for me, like vision is like achieving that picture.
Okay.
That I've thought about, that I've prayed about, like, or driving towards it. Because if I can do a lot of things in my day-to-day in my real estate, profession. If I'm not driving towards that one vision, then I probably haven't succeeded this week. Like I've wasted time. When we go, my wife and I take a 3 to 4 day trip in the Caribbean every January to set our goals for the year, and it's really crafting this vision. Like, man, this year, like I'm gonna be under 180 pounds. Doing cardio 4 times a week. That's not an exciting vision for me right now, but it's gonna feel great when I get there. When I work out this week, it's not driving me towards that vision, I haven't succeeded. Like I can go show up at the gym, but if I don't do my 45 minutes of cardio, like that's not success. So a lot of people are like doing stuff, but it's not towards the vision that they see, so it's not successful.
Okay, let's change gears. I'd love that. That's a really clear and concise definition for me. I can use that. Let's talk about spousal support, because you and Malia have some similar wirings where you're going to go try stuff. You're going to risk failure to succeed at something that matters. But maybe your spouse isn't wired similarly to you. Any advice for maybe someone who's listening that their spouse isn't quite with them yet on maybe expanding their circle or trying to find wisdom or maybe taking some steps in their professional life that would lead them to a different outcome?
Well, I'm definitely not afraid of risk. And just because she owns her own business, she's totally the opposite of me. So I get it from most people. I've got a buddy who just put $7,000 in Dogecoin or Dogcoin, however they say it, right? I was like, your wife doesn't know about that, does she? He's like, no, but I made $2,500 in a day. I'm like, that's great. My wife would never let me do that, right? So there are boundaries to this, adventurous, risk-driven person. But that goes back to the vision. That's what marriage is great about, is you have a shared vision. So we have like our own visions in our jobs and goals, but we have a shared vision too. One of them this year is like, we're going to build a house. That's been a vision for me for like 4 years. I even had a plan of how to make it happen. Because she wasn't willing to take that leap, so to speak, that I've had to wait 4 years. That's frustrating, but that's okay because we're on the same page. So the key is like having a similar vision. And when you don't, being patient about a lot of it's just planting seeds with your spouse,
Give me an example of planting seeds. I love that.
Well, we were talking about this earlier. Asking when we would disagree about a strategy or an opportunity, taking the time to ask good questions, that plants a seed in most people,
Yeah.
Instead of trying to argue about it. It sounds subversive, but I'm going to ask my wife lots of questions to start making her think the way I think, or vice versa, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a much more disciplined person because of the lifestyle that she's helped me live. But if you're not asking your spouse questions, then you're never going to see either side grow. You're just going to get frustrated.
Oh, I love that. Okay. You've talked about the transitions you've taken in your career professionally. I would call those stretch roles because you stepped into something that you didn't know you'd succeed in, or if you'd be good at, or if it would ultimately bring success. You're a pretty young leader. How do you plan to put a vision in place that allows you to continue to come up against things that scare you and stretch you and make you want to be a better leader?
For me, sometimes you hit those natural moments where you're like, I'm bored. If I get bored, then I don't have a big enough vision,
Yeah.
And for people like me, it's not that I want to be busy. It's just I need to have a full life, like the abundant life. And my Chinese friends would call it the colorful life. Like if things start to get dull, it's because my vision isn't big enough. And then I'm like reevaluating, right? That's why I say like, I'm going to hit 1,000 units and then eventually I'm going to hit 10. Making calls, to athletes out of the blue, like that really gets your juice flowing. Taking steps. And that's where having relationships in business is great. I had a buddy that texted me like, did that guy answer? And I hadn't called him yet. So I made the call. So having those other people you're not competing against your friends, but they're driving you forward because you realize like there's so much more. It's like as we live in Nashville and we see people move here, especially professionally, like I've got lots of buddies that have moved here that are real estate investors, and like Nashville's like cheap. It's not as cheap as it used to be, but the stuff that they do or have done in the Northeast or the West Coast, like it's like getting started in Nashville is pretty easy for them. And I'm like, man, my vision's not big enough. I literally drove around Nashville 2 weeks ago with a guy that moved here from Boston. And he's describing to me this area of Boston that's just booming with billions of dollars in investments over the last 5 years. And he's describing a part now. He's like, I could see that part of Nashville being that like that. I'm like, wow, that's the biggest thing is like, man, if finding people that have a bigger vision, and then all this, I don't even try, my picture changes. So now when I drive around Nashville, I see this Boston Harbor area that's not there yet.
Well, it's like, have you ever bought a car and before you bought the car, you never noticed them, but the second you bought that car, it's like, I see these things everywhere. I'm sure there's a scientific or psychological explanation for that. But it's almost like that when it comes to whatever your profession is, wherever your vision is being cast, you start to see it, but you almost have to get there first. So your friend from Boston helped you see something, and now you can't unsee it.
It's amazing. That's why, like, especially going to like a conference once a year and meeting people that do what you do, who are from other parts of the country, and just asking them like what their vision is. Like, a lot of people get intimidated by that. I get inspired by it because, once again, I'm just grow. I'm always here to grow. Like, there's never enough growth. Like, there's no pride that's going to hold me back. So tell me what your vision is. How did you get there? Man, maybe I could do that too.
Well, let's circle back to Pro Legacy Capital for a second. When you guys started this company, were there a couple accounts already in hand, or did you start like completely empty when it comes to the entertainer, athlete, client?
Well, going back like 4 years ago in real estate, when I decided to focus on athletes and entertainers, I knew a fair amount of entertainers, mainly entrepreneurs. I didn't know any athletes, but I just like said, this is who I'm going to go after and help. It was wild because 4 months later, I met with some guys from the Titans about their housing, and he goes, hey, I've got some of the guys on the team are asking if they know any real estate investors. Like, can I connect you? I'm like, yeah. So, the week later, I'm meeting with two of the top paid guys on the team talking about real estate investing. 6 months later, I buy my first commercial property. So I didn't even have experience in commercial property, and I'm talking to these guys about buying commercial property. But we take the leap of faith essentially together, and I'm pretty honest about what I've done, where I want to go. That was both me and another the pro football player's first commercial property, right?
How'd you endear trust? How'd you help those guys understand, hey, this is new for me, but I'm the kind of guy that can take you there?
Because number one, I'm honest, and number two, I'm like teaching them as I go. So a great leader is just one step ahead. You don't have to be 100 steps ahead. I used to think I had to have this massive portfolio, but I realized like as long as I'm one step ahead, I can lead people. So these guys, like I had a lot of experience in distressed assets with tax sales. I'd done wholesaling, I'd flipped houses, and I knew the Nashville market. So we would just drive around town and talk about these things. And then I would say, these are the lessons I learned in this space. And as I trade up and move to the bigger stuff, I'm going to use these same lessons, right? And then when you find an opportunity, I'm cultivating that team so I can say, hey, I've talked to the broker on this deal. I've talked to the banker. This is what everybody's saying. We've got all the due diligence. Here you go.
It's a conversation about competency. So you said, man, a good leader is 100 steps ahead, but then you realize, well, I can do it if I'm one step ahead. Honestly, I think it's easier for a leader who's got recency with that experience because you know exactly what they're feeling, what they're thinking. It's like, hey, I remember that thought. Yep. I was nervous too. Here's how we overcame that. If you've moved so far beyond that, you might be disconnected from the emotion that you're leading somebody through. But let's talk about competency for a second. I think I asked this question to a lot of the guests where I think it's Warren Buffett said, risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. How do you learn what you're doing? Where have you built competency?
And Warren's done things for it feels like 100 years now, so there's not much risk for him.
That's right.
When it comes to doing my first ground up development, how do I I've never done a 20-acre, site. So how do I build competence for that? I partner with guys that already have. It's really simple. I'm there's a lot of guys, especially when you get into real estate investing, they just want to they want to do their own thing, which is fine. Like I've got properties I own by myself. I've got properties I own with partners, right? The first thing I do, I'm generally going to partner with somebody who's done it before. That's the fastest way to gain competency. Or I can try to do it. It's going to take me an extra 3 years. I'll probably lose money, I'm like, why would I not give up part of my deal to learn how to do something? And then if I want to go do more developments from the ground up by myself, I could, or I have a great partner I can keep rolling with, And that's kind of the pitch to my partners in the athlete entertainer world is like, hey, I'll help you do your first one. You may not want to partner with me, and that's fine. Like, you can go build your empire. But if you do, I'll be here and we can do stuff together, right? But yeah, to create competency, all you have to do is find somebody that's done it and do it once. Did you hear the last night after the game, the owner, they realized they needed to find somebody that had won Super Bowls. So they went out and found him. His name was Tom Brady. Like they literally are the worst franchise like in football history practically. And they just went and found the guy that was the best. And all of a sudden they're the best. Like why do we waste time like reading every book possible, watching every YouTube video possible, listening to podcast after podcast instead of just making a call and building a relationship? I mean, there's no need to waste time anymore.
I love that. Golly, that's so good,
Go
Scott.
get Tom Brady, Matt Warren.
Let's do it. Where's Tom? Let's call him up. So just a couple more questions and we'll get out of here. What do people misunderstand about athletes? I mean, they're real people. They've got concerns and families. Mm-hmm. They just have significantly more resources. I don't really know any pro athletes.
Yeah.
But what have you experienced about their personalities and their character, and what surprised you about meeting them?
Well, they're smarter than you think. At least the guys that I'm connecting with, like, they're not just athletes, but they're also exactly like you and me. Maybe they have like another 0 or 2 or 3 in the bank account, but they're just like you and me. Like I used to think like I'll meet a guy, we'll go buy an apartment together. And what I realized is like he has just as much fear of starting in real estate as I did when I was buying my first single family rental. So now we got to back it up. Like, hey, let's not drop $1 million or more and do a big deal. Let's go buy just a single family rental. I don't want to own it. I'll teach you own it. See how it feels. See that you're not losing your shirt. And then we can trade up and move into the stuff that I do if you want to do it together, right? They're just, people are people. They have the same fears that you and I do. They have the same dreams, The difference is like they do have a bigger bank account. So are they going to see those dreams come true? Maybe they can see them sooner, or maybe they can blow it sooner. It's a very like high risk, high reward, or whatever you want to say with them, because they've got so much opportunity in front of them. And we all do. We all have great opportunity in front of us. We just may not have the zeros in the bank account yet.
So let's wrap up with this. If Scott Stevens 15 years ago was sitting across this table, he doesn't know what's about to be in front of him. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give him?
It's time to move out of your parents' house.
Okay.
No, I would say, go read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You start seeking wisdom now and thinking differently, right? So the simple thing I would do, like, is take your money and go and, like, I'm a spender. So I wouldn't say you have to be a saver. I would just say, hey, go spend your money in things that make money. Like if I had bought, I could have put all this together, figured it out, and have, close. I'd already be at my goal by now. If 15 years ago, I was thinking differently about my money. Instead, it was just like, what's happening tonight? Who are we going out with? Am I making enough? Like you kind of just look around at every stage of life. Like, am I doing okay compared to them? And it's just like head down, quit looking around, create a vision and like start living it instead of just getting by, because every year is an opportunity. And so honestly, my 20s, there was a lot of wasted opportunity if I knew what I knew now. And build more relationships, right? The one piece of advice I didn't follow was from the best professor at Alabama where I went to school. And he goes, wherever you move, join the symphony board and just invest in those relationships. I still think like, man, if I had literally just done that, like I would have been set.
Scott, this conversation, as all of our conversations do, fire me up, man. You make me...
Let's go, bro.
You make me so proud to be a
on.
Nashvilleian. You are representative of what some of the best parts of this community are. You take risk and you bring people along with you, which I love. So thanks for being our guest today.
Thanks, Matt.
Today's conversation was so helpful. I love how clearly Scott brought attention to a couple really simple ideas. One, find wisdom. If there's any area of your life that you want to grow in, look for people who have the fruit of success and ask them how they did it. Two, success is simple, but not easy. Define a vision for where you want to be and build your days around the steps it takes to achieve that vision. If you do that, you'll be successful. Thanks for joining us on the No One Ever Told Me podcast. Please rate, share, and subscribe. In fact, why don't you pause right now and share this episode with a friend, and make sure you join us for the next episode on the No One Ever Told Me podcast.